I was 87 years old when my son walked into my office and told me I was being replaced. The morning started like any other Tuesday. I arrived at Henderson's Bakery at 5:30 in the morning just as the sun was beginning to paint the sky with soft pinks and oranges. The smell of fresh bread was already wafting through the building, yeast and warmth and home. For 43 years, that smell had been my life. My late husband, Thomas, and I had started this bakery with nothing but $1,000 loan and a dream. We'd worked side by side, flour on our clothes and hope in our hearts, building something real. Thomas passed away 12 years ago, but I kept going. I kept the bakery running, kept the recipes alive, kept the customers happy. Every morning, I'd unlock that door and feel him beside me. Our son, James, had joined the business when he was 25. Now he was 52, married to a woman named Patricia, and they had 2 children. My grandchildren, Emma and little Thomas, named after his grandfather. But that Tuesday morning, everything changed. I was in my small office at the back, reviewing the weekly orders. Mrs. Chen wanted 300 almond cookies for her daughter's engagement party. The Methodist Church needed 12 dozen dinner rolls for their community lunch. The Martinez family had ordered a custom cake for their mother's 70th birthday. I was writing notes, planning the schedule when James walked in. He didn't knock. He used to knock. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, and something in his voice made my pen stop moving. I looked up at him. My son, tall with his father's strong shoulders but softer around the middle now. He was wearing one of those expensive polo shirts Patricia bought him, the kind with the little logo on the chest. His face was serious, almost apologetic, but there was something else there too, determination. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, setting down my pen. "Sit down. Would you like some coffee?" "No, Mom. This is hard to say." He remained standing, shifting his weight from foot to foot like he used to do as a boy when he'd broken something and had to confess. My heart began to beat a little faster. "Patricia and I have been talking," he continued. "The bakery needs to modernize. We need new systems, new marketing, social media presence. We need someone who understands today's business world." "I see," I said slowly. "And you think I don't understand?" "Mom, you're 87. You still write everything by hand. You don't even use email. The world has changed, and we think it's time for you to step back. Enjoy your retirement. You've worked so hard for so long." The words hit me like cold water. Step back, retirement. Such polite words for what they really meant. "You're replacing me," I said quietly. James had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We're bringing in a business consultant, a young woman named Amanda Chen. She's very qualified, has an MBA from Mrs. Chen's granddaughter," I interrupted. "The one who moved back from the city last year." He blinked, surprised that I knew. "Yes, she's agreed to take over the day-to-day operations. You'd still own your share of the business, of course. You'd still get your payments. But, Mom, you could rest, travel, enjoy life." I looked at him for a long moment. This man I had raised, whose skinned knees I had bandaged, whose nightmares I had soothed. This man who ate at my dinner table every Sunday with his family, who still asked me to make his favorite apple pie for his birthday. "Does Patricia want this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. His silence told me everything. "I see," I said again. I folded my hands on the desk, the same desk where Thomas and I had shared our first kiss when we were young and foolish and brave. "When?" "Amanda starts Monday. We thought it would be easier if you could show her around this week, introduce her to the suppliers, explain the systems." "You want me to train my replacement?" "Mom, please don't look at it that way." "How should I look at it, James?" My voice remained calm, but inside something was cracking. "I built this place with your father. I've run it for over 4 decades. And now you're asking me to step aside for a stranger because I write with pen and paper instead of typing on a computer. It's not just that," Patricia thinks. Patricia thinks, I repeated softly. And what do you think, James? He met my eyes and I saw it, guilt mixed with resignation. He'd already made his choice and it wasn't me. I think it's time, Mom. I'm sorry. He left my office, closing the door gently behind him, as if that softness could cushion the blow. I sat there in the silence, looking at my order book, my careful handwriting recording decades of memories and relationships. Every page represented someone's celebration, someone's joy, someone's milestone, and they thought I was done. They thought I was just an old woman who couldn't keep up with the modern world. But they didn't know everything. They didn't know about the locked filing cabinet in the corner of my office. They didn't know about the recipes that existed only in my head, never written down, passed from my grandmother to my mother to me. They didn't know about the promises I'd made, the deals I'd struck, the secrets I'd kept. They thought they could replace me, but I was not done yet. To understand what happened next, you need to understand where we came from. You need to know the story that James never really heard because he was too young to remember, and later he was too busy to listen. Thomas and I met in 1955. I was 19 years old, working as a waitress at a diner on 5th Street. He was 22, just back from his military service, looking for work. He came in every morning for coffee and toast, and every morning he'd leave me a nickel tip and a smile that made my heart flutter. We were married within 6 months. People said we were rushing, but when you know, you know. We lived in a tiny apartment above a hardware store. Thomas worked at the lumber yard during the day, and I kept waitressing at night. We saved every penny. Our dream was to open our own business, something that would be ours, something we could build together and pass down to our children. In 1958, we found the space, an old corner building with good bones but years of neglect. The previous owner had used it as a flower shop, but it had been empty for 2 years. The rent was affordable barely, and the landlord, Mr. Giuseppe Ferraro, was willing to take a chance on us. I like young people with fire in their eyes, he told us in his thick Italian accent. You remind me of me and my Rosa when we came to this country. You work hard. You make something good, yes? Yes, sir, Thomas promised. We'll make something good. We borrowed $1,000 from the bank, a fortune to us then, and we opened Henderson's Bakery in March of 1959. I was pregnant with James. Those first years were brutal. We worked 18-hour days. Thomas would start the ovens at 3 in the morning, and I'd join him at 4, my belly growing with our son. We made everything from scratch: bread, rolls, cookies, cakes. My grandmother had taught me to bake when I was a little girl in her kitchen, and those recipes became our foundation. Thomas had a gift for business, for talking to people, for making everyone feel welcome, and I had a gift for remembering. I remembered that Mrs. Patterson liked her bread with extra salt, that the Johnsons always bought cinnamon rolls on Saturday mornings, that old Mr. Lee preferred his birthday cakes with less sugar because of his diabetes. We built relationships, one customer at a time. James was born in August of that year, right in the middle of our busiest season. I took 3 days off, then went back to work with him sleeping in a basket near the ovens. He grew up with the smell of baking bread, with flour dust in his hair and the sound of the mixer as his lullaby. But it wasn't easy. There were times when we couldn't make rent, times when equipment broke and we couldn't afford to fix it, times when I cried in Thomas's arms, wondering if we'd made a terrible mistake. We'll make it, Eleanor, he'd whisper to me. We'll make it because we don't give up. That's who we are. And we did make it. Slowly, steadily, the bakery grew. We paid off our loan. We bought better equipment. We hired our first employee, a young woman named Margaret, who stayed with us for 20 years. Then another and another. By the time James was 10, Henderson's Bakery was a neighborhood institution. By the time he was 20, we had the most successful bakery in 3 districts. Mr. Ferraro became more than our landlord. He became family. When his wife Rosa died, we baked for her funeral, and he wept in our kitchen thanking us. You are good people, he said, good hearts. When James turned 25, he said he wanted to join the business officially. Thomas and I were thrilled. This was what we'd always dreamed of, building something to pass down to our son. But first, Thomas told him, you need to learn every part of this business. You'll start at the ovens just like I did. You'll learn to respect the work. James did learn for a while. He learned to mix dough, to time the baking, to deal with suppliers. But he was also restless, always talking about expansion, about opening more locations, about making the bakery bigger and better. We don't need to be bigger, Thomas would say gently. We need to be good. Then James met Patricia. She was a bank manager's daughter, educated, ambitious, always perfectly dressed. She had ideas about how businesses should run, modern ideas, she called them, spreadsheets and profit margins and market analysis. Thomas wasn't sure about her. She's very smart, he'd say to me at night, but does she understand what we've built here? Does she understand it's not just about money? Give her time, I'd tell him. She'll learn. But then Thomas got sick. Cancer. It started in his lungs and spread faster than we could fight it. He kept working as long as he could, but eventually he was too weak. He spent his last months in the hospital and then at home, and I divided my time between the bakery and his bedside. The last thing he said to me, the very last words were, "Don't let them change it, Ellie. Don't let them forget what we built this for." I promised him I wouldn't. After Thomas died, James and Patricia got more involved in the business. They meant well, I think. They wanted to help, to ease my burden. But their help came with conditions, with changes. Patricia wanted to cut costs by using cheaper ingredients. No one will notice, she insisted, but I noticed, and I refused. She wanted to eliminate some of our specialty items, the ones that didn't sell in huge quantities but that particular customers loved. They're not cost effective, she said, but I remembered Mr. Lee and Mrs. Chen and all the others who depended on those items. I refused again. Over the years, there were more and more disagreements, more tension, more times when Patricia would sigh and say, "Eleanor, this is the modern world. You can't run a business on sentiment," but I did run it on sentiment, on relationships, on quality, on keeping my promises, and the bakery thrived. Until that Tuesday morning when James walked into my office and told me I was being replaced. Amanda Chen started the following Monday, just as James had said. She arrived at 9 o'clock in the morning, 4 hours after I'd already been working. She was young, probably in her late 20s, wearing a sharp business suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and she had the confident smile of someone who'd never failed at anything. "Mrs. Henderson," she said, extending her hand, "I'm so excited to be here. Your bakery is a neighborhood legend." I shook her hand. Her grip was firm, practiced. "Thank you, dear. Your grandmother is one of our best customers." "I know. She talks about your almond cookies all the time." Amanda looked around the kitchen with bright, assessing eyes. "This is amazing. So much character, character." That was a polite word for old-fashioned. James appeared from the office, Patricia beside him. My daughter-in-law was wearing one of her expensive dresses, makeup perfect as always. She gave me a tight smile. "Mom, why don't you show Amanda around? Introduce her to everyone, explain how things work." So I did. I walked Amanda through the kitchen, showing her where we mixed the dough, where we stored the ingredients, how we timed the ovens. I introduced her to our staff, Carlos, who'd been with us for 15 years, young Jenny, who was working her way through college, and Marcus, our delivery driver. Amanda took notes on a tablet, her fingers flying across the screen. Every few minutes, she'd ask questions. "How do you track inventory?" "I keep a list in my notebook," I said, showing her my worn ledger. She blinked. "You don't have a digital system?" "I know what we have. I know what we need. But how do you analyze trends? Forecast demand? I know my customers. I know what they'll want. Amanda smiled politely, but I could see her thoughts. This old woman is stuck in the past. Over the next few days, Amanda shadowed me. She watched how I greeted customers by name, how I remembered their usual orders, how I adjusted recipes on the fly based on what ingredients looked best that morning. Mrs. Henderson, she said on Wednesday afternoon, you have an incredible memory. But have you considered that if something happened to you, all this knowledge would be lost? It should be documented, systemized. Some things can't be systemized, dear, I told her. Some things you have to feel. She made a note on her tablet. By Friday, James and Patricia called a meeting. The four of us sat in the office that had been mine for 43 years. Mom, James began, Amanda has some great ideas about how to modernize our operations. We'd like to implement them starting next month. What kind of ideas? I asked, though I already knew I wouldn't like the answer. Amanda opened her tablet. First, we should switch to a computerized inventory and ordering system. It will save time and reduce waste. Second, we should standardize all recipes. Write them down with exact measurements so anyone can follow them consistently. Third, we should renegotiate with suppliers to get better bulk prices. And fourth, we should reduce the number of specialty items and focus on high-volume products. Every word was a knife in my heart. Those specialty items are important to our customers, I said carefully. I understand, Mrs. Henderson, but they're not profitable. We can't run a business on nostalgia. There it was again. That dismissal of everything Thomas and I had built. Patricia leaned forward. Eleanor, we're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to help. The bakery has been stagnant for years. We need to grow, to compete with the chains moving into the area. Amanda's suggestions are solid. And what about the customers who've been coming here for decades? I asked. What about Mr. Lee and his low-sugar cake? What about Mrs. Chen and her almond cookies? They'll adapt, Patricia said coolly, or they'll find alternatives. That's business, I looked at James. My son sat there silent, letting his wife speak for him. When did that happen? When did he stop having his own voice? James, I said quietly, what would your father say about this? He flinched. Dad's gone, Mom. We have to think about the future. Your father is the future. Everything he built, everything he believed in, that's what should guide us. Mom, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be. That night I went home to my little house, the same house Thomas and I had bought when James was 3 years old. I sat in my kitchen drinking tea, looking at the photos on the wall. Thomas and me on our wedding day, young and hopeful. James as a baby. The whole family at James's graduation. Thomas and me at the bakery's 30th anniversary. They thought I was done. They thought I should fade quietly into retirement, let the young people take over, let them change everything we'd built. But I wasn't done. I went to my bedroom and pulled out a lockbox from the back of my closet. Inside were papers I hadn't looked at in years, old contracts, letters, deeds, and one document in particular that I'd almost forgotten about. I read it carefully, my heart beating faster. Then I smiled. Oh yes, I had one more card to play. The next morning I called my lawyer. Franklin Wheeler had been our family attorney for 30 years. He was 72 now, semi-retired, but he still handled my personal affairs. When I explained what I needed, there was a long pause on the phone. Eleanor, he said slowly, are you sure about this? This will cause quite a stir. I'm sure, Franklin. Can you pull the documents? Of course. I'll have everything ready by this afternoon. I spent the morning at the bakery as usual, but I was quieter than normal. I watched Amanda as she moved through the kitchen with her tablet, making notes, suggesting changes. I watched Patricia as she talked about marketing strategies and social media campaigns. I watched James as he nodded along, agreeing with whatever his wife said, and I waited. That afternoon, I asked James and Patricia to meet me in the office. Amanda was there too. I've been thinking about what you all said, I began, my hands folded calmly on the desk. About modernization, about the future, about stepping back. Patricia's face brightened. Eleanor, I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. I'm always reasonable, dear. That's why I've been successful for 43 years. I opened the folder Franklin had delivered. But before we make any changes, there are some things you should know. I pulled out the first document. This is the deed to this building. Did you know that Thomas and I bought this property in 1975? Mr. Ferraro, our landlord, was getting older and wanted to retire to Italy. He sold it to us for a very good price because we'd been such good tenants. The bakery doesn't pay rent, James. It owns the building. James blinked. I didn't know that. There's a lot you don't know. This building is worth approximately $1.2 million in today's market. It's in my name, not the business's name, which means, I paused for effect, if I decide to sell it, the bakery would need to find a new location. Patricia's mouth opened slightly. Amanda looked confused. But you wouldn't, James started. Let me continue. I pulled out another document. This is the trademark registration for Henderson's Bakery and our logo, also in my name, which means the business can't use the name without my permission. Mom, what are you doing? James's voice was rising. I'm teaching you something your father tried to teach you years ago, but you weren't listening. I'm teaching you about respect. I pulled out the third document, the most important one. And this is the partnership agreement Thomas and I signed with Mr. Ferraro back in 1963. What partnership? Patricia demanded. When business was very difficult in the early years, Mr. Ferraro didn't just reduce our rent, he became a silent partner. He invested $20,000 in the bakery in exchange for 20% ownership. When he died 5 years ago, that share passed to his family, specifically to his granddaughter. The room went very quiet. Mrs. Chen, Amanda whispered, That's right, dear. Your grandmother owns 20% of this business, and according to the partnership agreement, any major changes to the business operations require approval from all partners. That includes me, James, and your grandmother. I looked directly at Amanda. Did you know that when you took this job? She shook her head, looking pale. I didn't think so. You see, James and Patricia offered you this position without consulting Mrs. Chen or me. They offered to make major changes to how we operate without getting proper approval, which means I pulled out one more document. Technically, they're in violation of the partnership agreement. Patricia stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're using technicalities to... I'm using the law, Patricia. The same law that protects your interests protects mine. I kept my voice calm, almost gentle. Did you really think Thomas and I built this business for 40 years without protecting ourselves, without making sure that what we created would survive? James looked devastated. Mom, I didn't know about any of this. Why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked. You assumed I was just an old woman who wrote things down in a notebook and couldn't keep up with the modern world. You assumed you knew better. I closed the folder. But I know things you've never thought to learn. I know that Mr. Lee's low-sugar cake isn't just about his diabetes. It's because his late wife used to make it that way, and buying it from us helps him remember her. I know that Mrs. Chen's almond cookies are the same recipe her mother brought from China, and they're the only thing that tastes like home to her. I know that the Martinez family has bought every birthday cake from us for 3 generations because we remember how they like them, and that matters. I stood up, looking at each of them in turn. You wanted to replace me with systems and spreadsheets and efficiency, but you can't replace relationships. You can't replace memory. You can't replace heart. Amanda spoke up quietly. Mrs. Henderson, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. My grandmother talks about you all the time, about how you remember her first day in this country, how you made her feel welcome. She made me promise to be respectful to you, and I failed. You didn't fail, dear. You just didn't know the whole story. None of you did. I picked up my purse. I'm going to visit Mrs. Chen now. We have some things to discuss as business partners. When I come back tomorrow, we'll all sit down together and talk about the actual future of this bakery, the one that honors what Thomas and I built while also moving forward. Because I'm not opposed to change, James. I'm opposed to disrespect. I walked out, leaving them sitting in stunned silence. Mrs. Chen lived in a small apartment above a tea shop in Chinatown. When I knocked on her door that evening, she answered with a warm smile. Eleanor, what a wonderful surprise. Come in, come in. I just made jasmine tea. Her apartment was cozy, filled with photographs and plants and the gentle smell of incense. We sat at her small kitchen table, and she poured tea into delicate porcelain cups. You know why I'm here, I said. She nodded, her eyes twinkling. Amanda told me there was trouble at the bakery. She called me crying, saying she didn't know about our partnership. Did you know what James and Patricia were planning? Not until yesterday. Amanda mentioned she was taking over daily operations, and I became concerned. Mrs. Chen sipped her tea. I was going to call you this weekend. They forgot about you, I said. They forgot about the partnership. They think they own everything, but they don't. Mrs. Chen set down her cup. Eleanor, you and Thomas saved my life once. Do you remember? I did remember. It was 1972. Mrs. Chen had just arrived from Hong Kong with her husband and young daughter. They had nothing. She came to the bakery looking for work, and even though we couldn't afford to hire anyone, Thomas created a position for her. She worked for us for 5 years, learning English, saving money, until she and her husband could open their own restaurant. You gave us dignity when we had nothing, Mrs. Chen continued. You treated us like family. When Giuseppe offered us the chance to invest in the bakery, my husband and I said yes immediately. It was our way of paying back your kindness. You don't owe us anything, but we do. And now you need my help. She reached across the table and took my hand. Tell me what you want to do. We talked for 2 hours. Mrs. Chen was sharp, sharper than Patricia gave her credit for. She understood business, understood numbers, but she also understood people. By the end of our conversation, we had a plan. The next morning, I called a formal partnership meeting. James, Patricia, Amanda, Mrs. Chen, and I sat around the table in the bakery's office. Franklin Wheeler, my attorney, was there too. This meeting is to discuss the future operations of Henderson's Bakery, Franklin began formally. As per the partnership agreement, all major decisions require unanimous consent of the partners. The current partners are Eleanor Henderson with 60% ownership, James Henderson with 20% ownership, and Catherine Chen with 20% ownership. Patricia opened her mouth to protest, but Franklin held up his hand. James's share was gifted to him by his parents 10 years ago. However, he has no authority to make unilateral decisions without the consent of the majority partners. James looked at Patricia, then at me. Mom, I'm sorry. I should have consulted you properly. I should have remembered. Yes, you should have, I said, but my voice was gentle now. But you can still learn. That's what I want to talk about today. Learning, growing, changing in the right ways. Mrs. Chen spoke up. Amanda, my granddaughter, has presented some interesting ideas. Some of them are good. The computer system for inventory, that makes sense. Having backup documentation of recipes, that's practical. But some things should not change. The personal service, the special orders, the relationships with customers, these are what make Henderson's Bakery special. I agree, I said, so here's what I propose. Amanda, you're clearly talented and well educated, but you need to understand this business from the ground up before you can change it. I want you to work alongside me for 6 months, learn the customers, learn the recipes, learn why we do things the way we do them. Then we'll sit down together and decide what changes make sense. Amanda nodded slowly. I'd like that, Mrs. Henderson. I really would. James, I continued, you need to remember that your father and I built this business on principles that matter. Profit is important, but it's not everything. When you start cutting corners, you lose what makes you special. Patricia, my daughter-in-law's face was red, but she met my eyes. You're very smart about business. But you need to understand that not everything can be measured on a spreadsheet. Some things, loyalty, trust, reputation, they take decades to build and minutes to destroy. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, You're right. I've been pushing too hard. I just wanted to help the business grow, but I didn't stop to think about what we might lose in the process. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. So here's what we're going to do, I said. Mrs. Chen and I will remain the senior partners. James and Amanda will work together on modernization efforts, but all major changes will be presented to Mrs. Chen and me for approval. We'll implement a computer system for inventory and documentation. We'll improve our marketing carefully, but we will not sacrifice quality. We will not eliminate specialty items, and we will not forget why we're here. Everyone nodded. And one more thing, I added, I'm not retiring. I'm 87 years old, and I might not be here for another 40 years, but I'll be here as long as I can. This bakery is my life's work, and I'm not done yet. That was 6 months ago. Today, as I sit here telling you this story, Henderson's Bakery is thriving in ways I never expected. Amanda turned out to be a blessing. Once she stopped trying to completely overhaul everything and started actually listening, she brought wonderful ideas. We have a website now. Amanda designed it, and it's quite beautiful. She put up photos of our products, our history, customer testimonials. Young Jenny helped set up something called Instagram, where we post pictures of our daily specials. People love it. We did implement the inventory system. I'll admit, it's helpful. Amanda showed me how to use the tablet. I'm not as hopeless with technology as everyone thought. I still keep my notebook, though. Old habits are hard to break, and honestly, some things I still prefer to write by hand. But the most important things haven't changed. Mr. Lee still gets his special low-sugar cake. Mrs. Chen still buys her almond cookies every Saturday. The Martinez family still orders all their celebration cakes from us. And we've gained new customers too. Young families who discovered us through the website, tourists who read about us in a magazine article Amanda arranged. James and I had a long conversation, just the two of us, a few weeks after that partnership meeting. We sat in the bakery after closing, eating leftover apple pie, and really talked for the first time in years. Mom, he said, I'm sorry I almost destroyed what Dad built. I got so caught up in Patricia's ideas, in wanting to prove I could make the business successful, that I forgot what success actually means. Your father would be proud of you for learning that lesson, I told him. It's never too late to remember what matters. Patricia and I have a better understanding now, too. She'll never be the daughter-in-law I dreamed of. She's too focused on money, too practical. But she loves my son, and she's trying to respect what Thomas and I built. That's enough. Amanda has become like another granddaughter to me. She works at the bakery 3 days a week now. She also started a consulting business helping other small businesses modernize without losing their soul, if you can believe that. Her experience with us taught her that old and new can work together. Mrs. Chen and I meet every Tuesday for tea. We talk about the business, about our families, about life. Her husband passed away last year, and having each other has helped both of us deal with the loneliness that comes with age. I still arrive at the bakery at 5:30 every morning. My hands are more wrinkled now. My back aches more than it used to. But when I unlock that door and smell the bread baking, I feel Thomas beside me. I feel all the years we spent building something good. The other day, a young couple came into the bakery. They were looking at houses in the neighborhood, trying to decide if they wanted to move here. The wife asked me, "What's this area like? Is it a good community?" I smiled at her. This neighborhood is built on people who care about each other, on businesses that remember your name, on traditions that matter. If you move here, you become part of that. You become family. They bought a house 2 blocks away. Last week, they came in to order their daughter's first birthday cake. That's what James and Patricia didn't understand at first. That's what Amanda had to learn. A business isn't just about profit margins and efficiency. It's about the people you serve and the values you hold on to. My mother used to tell me, "Eleanor, you can't take your money with you when you go, but you can leave behind the way you made people feel." Thomas and I built Henderson's Bakery to make people feel welcome, valued, remembered. That's our legacy. Not the money, not the building, not even the recipes, though those are important. Our legacy is the feeling you get when you walk through our door and someone knows your name. They thought they could replace me. They thought an old woman with a notebook couldn't compete with computer systems and business degrees. But they learned something important. Technology can help you, but it can't replace heart. Education can teach you, but it can't replace experience. Youth has energy, but age has wisdom. I'm 87 years old. I don't know how many more mornings I'll be able to unlock that bakery door. Could be 1 year, could be 10. But however long I have, I'll spend it doing what I love, surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and the faces of people who've become family over decades. And when I do finally have to step aside, really step aside, not because someone's pushing me out, but because it's time, I'll know that what Thomas and I built will continue. Because now James understands, Amanda understands, even Patricia is starting to understand. You can't replace heart with technology. You can't replace relationships with efficiency. And you certainly can't replace an old woman who knows every story, every customer, every secret that makes a business more than just a business. They thought I was done. They thought I should fade quietly away. Let the modern world take over. Let the young people run things their way. But I wasn't done. I'm still not done. And neither are you, whoever you are watching this. Never let anyone tell you that your age makes you irrelevant. Never let anyone convince you that experience doesn't matter. Never let anyone replace what you've built with your bare hands and your stubborn heart. Because here's what I've learned in 87 years. People will always underestimate you. They'll always think they know better. They'll always try to push you aside when you're no longer convenient. But if you hold on to your dignity, if you remember your worth, if you fight for what matters, not with anger but with quiet strength, you'll show them they were wrong. You'll show them you're not done yet, not by a long shot.